So this movie explores gender, race, and class. The movie Belle is a 2013 film that is based on the true story of Dido Elizabeth Bell. It takes place in the mid 1700s. Belle is a mixed race daughter of a slave and a British Navy officer who was raised by her wealthy great grand uncle and his wife, Lord and Lady Mansfield. Belle is a movie that explores gender, race, and class throughout its concepts. The first is race. For instance, racism and race are a common theme. Janice Peck says, as the norm against which others are judged, whiteness is the absence of color, so that not seeing color means everyone is seen as white. For those who do not identify themselves as white, this erases a basic aspect of their existence. It is also implies that they can only be seen as equal if they are willing to accept this erasure. Lord and Lady Mansfield raised Dido as a free gentlewoman together with their niece, Lady Elizabeth Murray. Because Dido was raised with wealth, racism still prevents her from enjoying the full advantages of her upbringing. She is forced to eat separately from the family when visitors come over and to stay out of their sight. Although her family treats her no different from her white cousin Elizabeth, at first she does not fully understand that the color of her skin will forever change her life. Janice Peck also says that inferential race is invisibility relies on ideologies of race that are a part of the society's conditions into which we are born, and through which we acquire racialized identities, understand others based on race, interpret social relationships within racial categories, ideologies, and our frameworks of the meaning rooted in dominant societal values and embedded in key social institutions such as law, education, the media, and the family. Through these institutions, ideologies shape our understandings of the world and our conduct. Through our conduct, we participate in maintaining and perpetuating our society's ideologies. Even though she is Black, she is well educated, literate, and clever enough to be her great uncle's legal secretary. She takes full advantage of her social class and her wealthy upbringing, a privilege people of color did not have back then. But again, her race fares at a disadvantage when she comes of age to get married. Her aunt and uncle do not believe that she will get married because she is someone who is of color. The movie also shows that through her close relationship with her uncle, who is the Lord Chief of Justice of Britain, influences his ruling that later ends slavery in the British Empire. Janice Peck also says that it thus becomes difficult to justify liberalism's desire to correct racially based inequalities among different social groups, when the code of the individual can be used to criticize racial stereotyping, defined as a failure to recognize people as individuals, and to refute the argument that racism is practiced and directed at social groups. Next themes are gender and class. Rosalind Gill says that these include the notion that femininity is a bodily property, that the shift from objectification to subjectification, these themes coexist with and are structured by stark continuing inequalities and exclusion that relate to race and ethnicity, class, age, sexuality, and disability, as well as gender. During the movie, when both girls come of age, for both of them, marriage is a sure thing on their families' minds. Arrangements are made to have Lady Elizabeth come out, but Lord and Lady Mansfield believe that she will not get married due to her not having inheritance. They also believe that because of Dido's mixed race status, she will also not get married. Gregory Bentistos says that class distinctions operate virtually every aspect of our lives, determining the nature of our work, the quality of our schooling, and the health and safety of our loved ones. When Dido's father dies, he leaves her a generous sum of £2,000 a year, and during that standard, enough to make her an heiress. Lady Elizabeth, in contrast, will have no income from her father, whose son from his new wife will be named his sole heir. Rosalind Gill also says that it can be argued that this represents the male gaze, a higher or deeper form of exploitation than objectification, one in which objectifying male gaze is internalized to new form a new disciplinary regimen. In the regimen, power is not imposed from above or outside, but constructs our very subjectivity. Gill goes on to say, arguably, monitoring and surveying the self has long been requirements of the performance of successful femininity, with instruction in grooming, attire, posture, allocation, manners being offered to women to allow them to emulate more closely the upper white class ideal. It could be looked upon as during this era, looking for marriage, women are seen as objects but also seen as money. To some men, only one Dido for her large inheritance and reject Elizabeth because she does not have one. Renee M. Soroy says that Joe Millionaire class by asking us, will women go for a man that is considered a lower and working class? The article also explores how women tend to act more materialistic during the course of the show, showing us that exquisite taste and heightening of their class to impress a man, often linked to the term that, or ideal that women are just gold diggers or want a man for his money and power and access to resources. In this case, in the movie, the marrying to get access to resources goes both ways. Although she is colored, Dido has the advantage over her white cousin Elizabeth in the marriage market because she has an inheritance. Scientifically speaking, it is true that women do go for men of a higher class to lift them up and to use them as resources. At first, Dido becomes engaged to a man named Oliver Ashford, the son of a scheming woman, and his younger brother, who was a bigot, James Ashford. Gorham says that it is only when asked to list their personal beliefs about blacks that we see a difference. High prejudiced people tend to list the same traits enlisted for a cultural stereotype, while low prejudiced respondents tend to list other more positive traits. At first, James is interested in Elizabeth, but stops courting her once he finds out that he has no inheritance. James also goes to tell Dido that by marrying his brother, she will disgrace his family's name, then insults and manhandles her. Oliver, who is without fortune, proposes to Dido. She accepts, but later calls it off. Later, Dido falls in love with a man named John, her uncle's apprentice. But her uncle forbids them from marrying because he is not a gentleman or of high status. Her uncle later changes his mind and helps John become a lawyer so that he can marry Dido. Next is race and class. Mentiso says that some themes and notions about that the poor do not exist, they are faceless, they are undeserving, that they are down and on their luck, and that they only have themselves to blame, and that they are an eyesore. To bring race and class together throughout the movie, Dido and Elizabeth's uncle is a judge involved in the Zong massacre case regarding the payment of an insurance claim for slaves killed when thrown overboard by the captain of a slave ship. Bell Hooks says that given the context of class exploration and racism and sexism domination, it is only through a resilient struggle reading, looking against the grain, that Black women are able to value the process of looking enough to publicly name it. During the 18th century, there were only about 15,000 Black people in London at the time. Most were paid servants. Bell Hooks goes on to say that, yet the existence of a Black woman within a white supremacist culture problematizes and makes complex the overall issue of female identity, representation, and spectatorship. When the two cousins reach adulthood, the man fails to commission an oil painter to paint his two great nieces, but Dido is unhappy about sitting for it because she feels that she will be portrayed as a subordinate to her cousin Elizabeth, because many pictures back then only portrayed Blacks as servants. Gotham says that it is important that we keep in mind that even though these cognitive mechanisms operate outside our conscious awareness, they appear to be supportive, positive views of ourselves. This implies that even if people don't endorse stereotype, members of the dominant social groups interpret information in ways that support their superiority by extension reinforce subordinate positions of minority groups. In the end, she is so beloved that the painting sees her and Elizabeth as equals instead of the subservient poses of Black people in that era. This movie is great for the exploitation of the status of women, the insurance values of slaves, English class prejudice, and the way of marriage deals. Thank you.